Okay, welcome. Today I speak to Niwel Tsumbu on the podcast. Niwel Tsumbu is a Congolese-born guitar player. He has created his very own style of playing the guitar, like from influences as diverse as jazz, classical music, African rumba, rock, folk music. He is a total force of nature on stage, an artist that always went his own path, and he's also a great human being. Welcome to the podcast, Niwel. I'm so happy to talk to you.
Thanks very much for having me, Kathryn. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for all that. I'm like, God, not sure if I live up to expectation, but I'll try.
Well, maybe to start, I would really love to hear from you a little bit. Um, how was your musical education shaped? Like, how did you grow up? How did music enter your life? Was it something that was always part of your life? Did you grow up in a musical family? And what shaped you the most as a musician?
Um, well, I always think about it. There's like two stages of my musical life. There's like before I started playing, and then after I started playing music. So I started playing for guitarists, it's probably normal 16. But before that, so basically before 16, growing up in Kinshasa, um, music is really part of life, it's a social thing. I was just talking to a friend recently. I said, we grew up, you didn't listen to albums, you didn't grow up with like, you didn't have stereos or no CDs. So you only heard music loud in pubs. If you go to Africa, most countries, like the pubs are, they play music loud and you're walking, music is part of life, people dancing in the street and, bands rehearse outside. So that's how I interacted with in the church, that's very early on when before I was even 10, in the church that I used to go to, it's a church where everybody was involved in music. So in that church, in every seat, there was like a shaker. There was also a bell, and then in front, there was like four big, huge drums, and there was no designated drummer. So anybody could just go. If the song starts, somebody would go up and start playing it. So it was really like that. And as kids, we would be on the side of the drums. That's what I remember doing that a lot. Always on the side of the drum, with a stick, and just kind of like banging away, and then, yeah, as I said, in terms of like the pop music of Congo and stuff, it was more just like you walk on the street, music is there. I didn't grow up with like the love of, going finding CDs or tapes, or we didn't have that sort of culture. But also in my family, everybody sang. Everybody sang, everybody dances. If there was a party, everybody would be on the dance floor. And my mom sang all the time. So it's just very, very social type of thing. That's how I interacted with music, and before I started playing. But also I was very I was interested in other music too. I wasn't just interested in Congolese music either, because I remember, actually, this was during the church. Every Sunday after the church, I would sit on the balcony of our house, and I would sit there because on the radio, my grandfather there was this program. Oh, my sorry, my headphones just fell there. There was a program there where they played uh, they played music that was not from Congo. I didn't know at the time what that music was, but it was just nice. It was just beautiful. And I was sitting on the balcony, and I remember so many times my grandfather would give out to me, because it's a pretty big drop. It's like 20-meter drop. He was like, "You don't sit there, you could fall." And so, but I would sit there just because I was listening to that music. But it was just so nice. It's only later on, I mean, I might jump forward and come back, but later on, when I started making music, and I started going to a music school, then I realized, oh, that music that I used to listen to was classical music, because I heard people playing that music in the school, that, like the usual suspect, like Mozart and Beethoven, this kind of things. So I had that love of different music, and also pop music, European pop music, and we grew up with a lot of French music. Uh, so it was always there. The radio played very diverse music, and yeah, that's before I played music. That's how I interact with music. It was never a dream of mine to become a musician. It was never like, I want to be a musician. It's just like music was great. And I used to dance a lot, and stuff like that. And, but then one day, I remember when I was 16, I remember exactly the day I saw my brother was playing. He was playing a line, a particular line. And I asked him to play. Can you teach me? He was playing the guitar. I was like, oh, can you teach me that? And he told me that line. And it was around 4 p.m. And I started playing that line. And next I remember I've been woken up with a big slap by my grandfather. Because what happened was I started playing. I got so into it. I never stopped. Everybody went to sleep. I kept playing, and I was the last person in the house. So I fell asleep, left all the doors open, all the lights on, just ready for any burglar to come and steal. But luckily that didn't happen. But my grandfather was like really, really mad. It's like, people can come and, steal in the house. So, yeah, from then on, then I was like, I was so obsessed with music. It was like I played all the time. I didn't want to do anything else. And just from then on, then it became more of an. Um, Now when I look back at it, it's feel it looks to me now in encountering music that way, learning music. It was like music actually found me. It kind of took because it took me in a completely different path to what I was on and what I would have been on if I did not find music.
Wow. Do you still remember the line that he taught you?
Oh yes. It's a famous line from a guitarist called Alain Makaba. He's a yes. So he was from a band called Wenge Musica. Um, so yeah, so I would, but from that day on, actually, I became so obsessed with playing, like I didn't want to do anything. I was doing pretty good at school, and I was a good boy. I was going to school. I was always doing well in school, and but then I started doing very badly, very badly because I wasn't studying. I was playing all the time. I mean, when I look back, I'm like, I feel so sorry for my parents because I'm like, God, I was so lost. To them, I was so lost, because so many times I remember, like at school, I'll be in school and I'll be just the teacher will be teaching and I'm like singing or I'm like playing drums and then the teacher would come to me like, you need to stop singing. And I remember so many times the teacher right in front of me talking to me say, you need to stop singing. I'm teaching, and I keep singing. And then so many times I got slaps, you know, got kicked out of the school. But now when I look back at them, like they did not. It's not like I was doing on purpose. They just thought I was the bad kid. But I was so completely not there. Like the music was just coming out of me without even knowing. And so that's how I was taken with music. I loved it so much. I just wanted to learn more and more. And I went to so many different people, anybody who was great in Kinshasa. I would walk. I walked. Oh, this is another thing. I walked all around Kinshasa. Didn't have money for for transport or anything like that. I would walk miles around. If I heard anybody who was like a good guitarist or and also a lot of traditional. I love the traditional musicians, but a lot of these guys you would find them in kind of rural areas and it's hard to get to those places. And I would go to those places and I'll just introduce myself. Hi, I'm a musician. I'm looking for to learn. Um, and also I met a guy called Chris Pengoy. He's a he was a very good guitarist. So when I met him, it was a perfect sort of timing and also just perfect meeting because when I met him, he was 10, maybe 12 years older than me. and he was already a seasoned Congolese sort of rumba soukous guitarist. He was, you know, he could play. He was playing in bands, and but also at the same time he was learning jazz from a different guy. So he would go there. So when I met him, he said to me, you can come, I can start teaching you. So what actually happened was I became like his backing track because he was learning the jazz. So he'd come, he'd teach me all these chords that, like he was learning. So I would play rhythm for him and he would solo over.
Wow.
And that was really, that was probably the biggest, the best university I've been with him. He really became a mentor. And and even though I still had more people I went to see, but he was like the main guy. I would go to, he told me, if he tells me come at 6 o'clock, I'll be there at 5 in the morning. Literally, I'll
Yeah.
be like 5 in the morning. I'll be in front of the house. I would skip school. I'd go to practice with him. But one thing that he told me too was, he was like, if you want to be great, you want to listen to all kinds of music and listen to music that you don't understand. He said, if you hear music that you don't understand, that's exactly what you should listen to. Make sure that you understand it before you move on. So that was another obsession of mine. I became really obsessed with going out and searching for music that I didn't understand. So this was another thing. I would go. I met so many people like that. The way we didn't have YouTube or Virgin or HMV. You remember that? Nothing like that existed in Kinshasa.
Yeah.
So what I used to do is I would find out if I heard about anybody. I would ask my friends or anybody, do you know anybody who has relatives in Europe or in America or just outside of Congo? And if they did, they'll give me. I'll ask them the address, and I would go there. I would knock the door. Hello, my name is Niwel. I'm just
Wow.
wondering if you have any music that's not from Congo. Literally.
Wow.
That I discovered a lot of music that way. I met a lot of people and met a lot of classical, music and flamenco music and jazz, a lot of jazz. Yeah, so you kind of just went that way, and to this day, I'm still doing the same, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And when you speak like this, it seems to me like the path you were on is very different from the way kids learn music in Europe. It seems like totally
Oh, yeah.
like yeah. And
Completely. Oh, completely. It's
yeah,
completely different. Oh my God.
yeah.
I was talking to my daughter. My daughter, she really loves music, and she's been singing, and so she started learning the piano, and then without the piano, it's an old electric piano, and then she was like, in the last year, she was like, I don't really, I want to play more, but I don't like the piano. The piano is like, it's not good. I was like, really, this piano is fine. I learned guitar with like, but that's another thing. I never had the guitar. So the guitar that I used to use had like bicycle cables, all this kind of, so you have to, and like sometimes people say to me, you have strong fingers. I'm like, well, bicycle cables was my foundation. And so I said to her, the piano is fine, but she's kind of stopped playing. So I was like, well, maybe she's right. So I went and bought her a piano, like brand new electric piano. And then she's still not playing as much. So I was like, so I had to sit her and go, listen, you have a very good piano. This is a professional piano. You don't take it for granted, Like they have it easy. It's just so easy they don't realize. So I had to explain to her. I was telling her my story yesterday that this is what I had to do, even though I didn't
Wow.
have a guitar, So it's a completely different, complete. And then we had to take her to like lessons, Like I had to fight to go to play. Like as I said, I was banned. The guitar was banned at home because I was so obsessed,
Wow.
and it was banned. So I was not allowed to play. So I would literally jump over the wall in the back of the house to go out to play. So I was fighting, The reason I play music today because I fought for it. If it was just for my parents, I wouldn't be playing.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's a completely different. It's a different path.
Do you know, like in Europe, I don't know, in Germany, we say like every kid should learn an instrument, do you know? But when I listen to your story, it's really like music found you and you fought for it to 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 conquer it, do you know? And
Yes.
what I felt as a violin teacher was, oh, lots of kids, they're brought to music lessons. It's not really their own wish that they want to play an instrument. And I wonder sometimes, is it is that even the right path?
Yeah, I've thought about this. I have thought about this, and it's, I always think like, the universe is vast and there's a lot of different ways. I always say
Yeah,
there's many ways of doing one thing. There's literally as many ways as there are stars in the skies. One might say, yes, my way is the better way, but I think it would always come down to the person themselves, the passion that they have, the motivation for sure. But sometimes some people don't really have that motivation. Sometimes they need a little bit of push. Some people, like for me, it's the other way around. Like like 110% self motivational. It's like if you push me, it's probably not gonna work.
yeah,
It's like I wanted, um, but yeah, I can't really say if it's right or wrong, because I'm sure there are people who've had a different experience, like your experience, like yourself, and you play music, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. So I think, I can't really say it's right or wrong. There's one way, there's another way, you know.
yeah,
Um, but one thing for me for sure, now when I look back my journey, uh, you know, I really do believe, because when I was younger, I was a very um, I liked, I was very curious with with everything, with life, with the reality of life, life, where did we come from? Oh, I had all these questions, This is it's more common in Europe to ask those questions than in Africa. Like, I remember when I was younger, I was wondering what happens in the moon, my friends, they were like, no, these are the mystery of God. You don't think about those things.
hmm
We do this kind of, like, this is very common in African people. It's like, okay, sometimes I used to go to the river, and I just go to the river, Congo River, and I'll be like, wow, what happened down there? I'd love to go. Oh no, you can't go there. There's all these spirits there, the spirit of the world, all these kind of things. But
yeah,
I had this sort of curiosity. And but if I look at the situation that I was in with my family, with the country, Congo, the political situation of it all, if I did not play music, I think that sort of curiosity, that brain that I had, would have probably just rot.
mm,
Because, we were a very modest family, and there was no chance I was going to be able to study a lot, and I had quite a scientific mind. I think if I was able to, I would have loved to go like study science, but you don't study science in Congo, like you know. And so, and then also life was really, really tough. Like my dad died when I was 3 years old, and then my mom was quite sick a lot. That in Africa, it's like, that's like, I don't know, that's like starting the race, like racing
yeah,
backwards. People are racing and you're going like backwards. Literally, you have no chance. Um, so life was quite difficult. And I don't see, if music didn't find me, and around that time also when I started learning, because my father wasn't around. I was growing up with my grandparents, and my mom, as I say, she wasn't well. So when you're teenager, this anything could have happened. And my friends, they were all starting to. A lot of friends went to war and became soldiers. These kind of things.
mm,
But music was like best. It was really a sanctuary for me. It really was.
yeah,
Because as soon as I played, this is where I was. As I used obsessed, I was obsessed. But really, when I was playing, I would completely travel. I was transcending Kinshasa basically. I wasn't there. I would play until I was about to collapse of starvation. Like days, I would forget to eat after days. But it was really thankful. It put me in a completely different path um, that I want to look back at. I feel like, wow, music really sheltered me from the harshness of Kinshasa.
Mm.
You know, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. When I listen to your music and like when I played with you as well, like your music has such a different structure to most music that I was used to, and also to most music that the people you played with are used to. And I would just really love to know, how do you think about your own music? What is your process in composing your own music? Um, what inspires you, and how do you think about your own music?
Yes. Really, what I would say, something that I have that, now I've had this a lot. This is it's been like this since Congo. People always say that your music is different. For me, you know, the simple answer is I don't know, because it's my voice. It's like the sound of my voice. If you ask me why does your voice sound the way it sounds, I don't know. I was born with that voice. Um, but what I really have, but I've been trying to really figure out, why? Because I started composing very early. Um, like I think probably a year, was it, when was that? 98 or something like that. I mean, even early, even 90. I started playing in the church basically. But in the church, that even I'll just show you how different that was. Like these standard songs you sing in the church, you know, that's it. If you go to play the church, these are the songs that you sing, you play. But but when those guys came, my friends, they came to ask me to join them in the church band. I was like, well, I'm not really interested, you know, be- but if you want me to join, we'll have to write our own songs. I don't want to play the church songs. Like even that alone is like, it never happens. You don't, you just go and play the church song. But I had this sort of mind where I was like, no, I want to just write songs. So they were like, okay, no problem. You can do that. But you can also play church songs. So what happened is I wrote 10 songs, literally 10 songs, like in the space of like a week. And then I took them to the church, and those songs were already different. This story that I had with you, it started then. It was already the same story. I just wrote things that came to me. I
Yeah,
just put out this chord here, this chord, this melody. I took a lot of the words because it was the church. I took a lot of the passage from the Bible. I created songs on them. And those melodies, those rhythms, it was exactly the same. My friends were like, what kind of rhythm was this? Where's the down? All this started then, So it was completely natural. But I think it's my rhythm approach. That's what really I came to realize today is that my sense of rhythm is what really makes my music different. My
yeah,
sense of rhythm, the way I approach the rhythm, I think that's what makes it different. But I can't really explain because it's so normal to me. As I said, I can't really tell you why the sound of my voice sound the way it does. But it's more to do. I think now I can say yeah, it's also not the fear of not sounding different. I think sometimes people have ideas that they wanted to switch into a particular style. But I've never really had that fear. For me, this is the way it goes, and this is the way it goes. It just sounds like this. I've never had that fear of just like letting it be its own thing.
yeah. And it's interesting because for me, like you are such a mentor for me in this, because you are like, when I think about you, the one thing that is the strongest in my experience of you is that you have zero doubt about that your music is exactly right the way it is. It's supposed to be like that. Even if everybody tells you, well, I don't understand, like, there could have been many ways on your path where you could have said, okay, I'll change it to something that people understand better, but you never did that. And I have
No,
so much respect that you never did that. I think it's amazing. So what gave you the strength to stick to your inner voice and not change what you
yeah.
knew was the right thing to do?
You know what? I will have to go back to Kinshasa because what I was playing, Lord, it, anybody who invites me to play with them, it was always that. I would always bring my ideas. So, that are there, and because they wanted me, people always wanted me to play. I was like, well, then you have to take my ideas. So, so they can't really fire me because if they don't like it, then I just don't come. I think that probably developed that strength, Um, yeah, I think it's just that really. I think it's just believing in what you are doing. What you're doing is that's really it's about believing what you're doing, and what you're doing is what it is. It might fit into like I can wake up today, decide to write songs that sound like traditional music of Congo, or jazz. I can do that. But it's just it will feel weird. I have to make myself do that. But if I was walking around and just like a song comes in my head, it's always the kind of music that comes to me. I remember once actually in the church with a friend of mine, Eddie Valen, with the bass player. And then, so we're playing, this is right in the middle of the church, like we're singing for God. Everybody's like worshiping God, and God is probably there. And then I started playing this line. My friend completely loses the rhythm because whatever I played completely put him off. And it turns off my amp because I was throwing him off. He was losing the rhythm. So then I was like, what are you doing? So I turned it back on. I started playing the same thing. The same thing happened. He completely loses it again. So we started having this squabble, this right in the middle of the church, and the pastor's looking at us. What's going on? Like he thought I was trying to throw him off, but it was literally what I was just doing at the moment, yeah, at that moment. So yeah, it's just this is how I hear music. I can't really tell exactly why. It's just something that I have, naturally.
It's so interesting because I would say so many musicians like fight with the sense of, oh, what will other people think of me? And you're one of the few examples. But I don't know, do you ever worry what other people think about your music? Yeah, exactly.
No,
And I
no, no.
think you're the only one I know that has this clarity of, okay, this is my music and it's exactly perfect that way.
Yeah. If I worried, I won't be playing the music the way I do. Like because this is even my family. I've had like my family, my brothers. Why don't you just play rumba? Like, why don't you just do this? I keep saying to them, actually, the last time I said to them, maybe when I'm like 65, I'm gonna do that. So I've actually made a promise with my brother. I was like, when I'm 65, I'm gonna write just rumba songs. But right now, I'm still gonna just go with my adventure. No, definitely don't worry at all. Don't worry. I'm happy. When I come, for me, especially if I work something out, I spend time on it, I learned it, and then I go and perform on stage. That alone is really makes me happy. And then the reaction people, if people love it, I want people to like it. I want people to love it. And if people love it, it's even better. You know. But if people don't like it, it's usually well, it usually doesn't really happen. People usually, unless they're lying to me, they usually say, "Oh, we like it's different," but you know, that's why I'm still playing music today. So I must be doing something right.
Yeah, totally. The, sec- the second thing that I think about when I think of you is you're not afraid at all to make mistakes. Like,
Ye No, I make a lot of mistakes. Oh God, Jesus.
and it's
I
something I
make
learned. I learned from you, and we talked about this a lot when we
mm,
played together. And I just like, I mean, I grew up with classical music, and my whole
mhm.
life was my musical education was about trying not to make mistakes, and it's such a limiting factor. And I experienced you as like somebody who just really doesn't is not afraid to make mistakes.
No, but that's also probably comes from it's a cultural thing, like
Uh-huh.
it's yeah, that's probably comes from the because yeah, I mean, because people are, if you go back to the way I grew up, music is about dancing. That's it. It's such a cultural thing, music, and nobody's there to listen to like, that note wasn't placed in the right place. People will if it's people can't dance to it, they'll tell you, oh, it's not good. That's it. But they won't tell you like, oh, that note is wrong. You played it either wrong or not. It's if it's groovy, people are dancing to it. It's nothing mistakes. Nah. I mean, it's very common. You know, some of my favorite albums of Congo, you'll hear like the guitar is tuned, there's like a open string or bum notes. It's that probably comes from the culture more than anything else. It's not a thing. You know, this the way in Europe, as I say, I know I have many classical friends. They're so worried to get the right notes. Like you know, nah, this is if people are dancing in Congo, that's it. That's what it's about. Yeah.
Great. And improvisation. I mean, you're the king of improvisation, and I remember you telling to me once, like, we should just all walk on stage and just play and not rehearse. Just like go on stage, don't think about it, and improvise. Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about that?
Yeah. Improvisation is really, every musician should be able to improvise to really, have this sort of a higher sort of level of enjoyment of music. Because yeah, it's good to play things that are planned. It's a nearly different sort of brain that you use. But when I'm improvising, because you're really coming from nothing, and then you need to make something. So you kind of have a certain level of focus, and also you need to have your like even just in the approach in your brain. It's a completely different part of your brain you use when you're improvising and when you play a song that you know. And
Mhm,
for me, definitely, I I enjoy the best when I'm improvising. And but I had to learn. I improvising wasn't easy.
mhm,
I had to learn that there's the skills and all that. That's from my teacher and my mentor. So and actually, what he did he never let me solo. Actually, I played with him for like 4 or 5 years. He would hardly ever let me solo. I just played a lot of rhythm for him. So
mhm.
that was good for me because it grounded me. Because before I met him, I was the solo guy. I was just the guy who just like meandered all the time. So yeah, I was the annoying guy. He would be like, "Oh God, you just keep meandering on the guitar." But then when I met him, he was like, "No, you need to just develop your rhythm sense, sense of rhythm." So that was good for me. And yeah, and then also from listening, doing a lot of listening, and yeah, everybody should really improvise. It's really wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a completely different space of mind when you go to when you improvise.
Hmm. So I have this working theory. I mean, even us talking today, like we were scheduled to talk in the morning, and then it didn't happen because of the times we live in at the moment. So we're living in a crazy time at the moment, and the old system seems to be crumbling, and who knows what's going to happen next.
Thanks
Um,
God, yeah.
and I wonder if the skills we have as musicians, and especially as improvising musicians, are skills that might be useful in the times to come, because as musicians, we're so used to kind of not knowing what happens next. Like as improvising
Yes,
artists, and also like the musician's life is often paved with a lot of uncertainty. I wonder if the skills we've developed as musicians is something that could be useful for the times to come. What do you think?
for sure. Yes, for sure. I mean, for me, even that's a good, very, very good question because I think of it probably it's probably vice versa. So because music is life. Really, if you really want to ask me what's music, I'll tell you music is life and life is music. It's like this. And everything I do, I learned in everyday life. I kind of like I look at life or like my life in the lens of music. That's how I see it. How people talk, how we interact with people. Like we're talking now. It's I can look at it the same as how two notes could interact. I learned it that way. And then when it comes to the improvisation, this because also with improvisation, you need to also have information, and then to be able to communicate, you need to have the communication ability. Because when you're improvising your music in general, you're trying to communicate to people, you're trying to say something to people. And so you need to have that, the communication ability, you need to have the information, and then the patience, and then also listen. Like say you're playing with people around, in the band, so you need to listen to everybody, know where. At the same time, you need to keep the form of the song, the playing, the texture, and also at the same time, you need to not think at all. You need to be at the flow state where all that's happening, and you kind of like the observer. And I think if you take the same approach in life, that's the best way of living life.
Mm.
To have this way, you want to be able to communicate with people when you talk, make sense to what you're saying, and also and have harmony. We think about harmony in music, and also you need harmony with people. You need to be coherent. Um, with people. All this, you can really go both ways. You can take what you learn from music and do it in everyday life, and same what you learn in life, and also approach music the same way.
Hmm. So if life is music, and when you look at what's happening in the world right now, what kind of music do you see? What do you hear? What's happening musically at the moment?
Lot of dissonance, a lot of dissonance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dissonance going on at the moment. There's a lot of there's like, I mean, I don't have a guitar here, but there's a lot of dissonance right now. It's not very coherent at the moment, and it's very fragmented. You know, um, I mean, it's quite hard. Obviously, this is all because of the political situation, really. Sometimes because in everyday life, things are not too bad, but it's the political situation that's making it, you know, kind of distance. At the moment, that's if you ask me to write a song to describe the world right now,
Yeah.
it's dissonance as hell,
Yeah.
really. Confusion, and there's just a lot of wrong information, going around, and it's quite amazing. I mean, you go to social media, all these kind of things. I'm just wondering, why don't people just put really good information out there? Why is it just
Yeah.
not? Why is it all just the wrong information that we see mostly? It's like, you know, I don't understand. Like if people, have a tool and AI, all these things. Why do you have to fool people with wrong information? I don't understand. If I was to write a piece of music to describe the world now, oh my God, I don't know. It might not be listenable. No.
And if you had to resolve it musically, what would be
Yeah.
the solution to this musically?
Well, as I said, for me, music is this is a good question. I would answer it by kind of talking about music of Congo. If you listen to the music of Congo, you would think that these people are the happiest people in the history of humankind. We've had, I mean, this war now happening, but we've had wars happening since 30 years or so, nonstop, and we should be making the saddest music, probably. We have a country that's very rich in mineral. We have a lot of resources in the ground, but we don't benefit from it. All this technology the whole world is using, everybody has a piece of Congo in their hands, whether it's through their phones or electric cars or laptop. Everybody right now has a piece of Congo in their hand doing something with it because they have to use, a lot of the minerals that they use to make those electronic devices, like 80% of like cobalt, comes from Congo. But if you listen to Congolese music, it's a happy music, people dancing, like everything is fine, So I used to, I've been thinking about them, like, why? I came to realize this idea about how to express music. You know, we don't. It's like we use music not really to express feeling. It's more to like. It's more to travel, to transcend all that suffering. You know, it's more to do that than anything else. Because even the saddest song in Congo is not sad. You
Mhm.
know, you would still hear it in the word. People, the lyrics may be sad, but the music would always be very danceable. You know, even the saddest song, people dance on the dance floor. I think I find myself doing the same. You know, it's
Yeah.
if you listen to my music, you know, it's very adventurous. It's because I'm trying to create a world that I want the world to be. You know, that I have this, you know, I want the world to be colorful, and I like my music to be very colorful. I want people to feel good with my music. And even when it's sad, I also sing sad songs, or, you know, maybe I also sing, you know, some political songs here and there, but it's always in a very kind of going beyond of what the reality is.
Mm.
You know, it's like trying to reach for a better place that I have in in my mind. You know, so I that's kind of what I do. You know, with my music, I feel, you know, to answer that question, I think I'm doing that all the time because I if I had to make music to really represent my life, it would, you know, it would be like, you know, it probably be sad music. You know, so I think that's what I'm doing all the time, trying to just reach for a world, imaginary world where everything is beautiful and colorful and people are having a good time. You know, it's just kind of, it's completely different when I hear, you know, like Western, you know, like some Eastern European music. When I hear it, it's really sad. I'm like, God, this music is really, you listen to it, whoa, we don't get there. You know, you don't get that like that. Even the saddest song is always had this lightness because we're
Mm.
trying to create, you know, a better world that we don't have in reality.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. And um, do you know, I want to speak a little bit with you about ancestry because, like, I play folk music. You also play some sort of folk music, and often
Yeah.
it's rooted in a very deep tradition. But then also we're living in modern times, so and also like in Africa, I know there's a lot of folk and traditions that are maybe not so healthy anymore, like that you would take today and say, do you know, only because it's tradition, maybe it's not the best thing to do. But then on the other side, I think um, it's so important to be rooted somewhere in your ancestry and in your tradition. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to. Yeah. I mean, you know, really, I see. I'm a folk musician. I know it doesn't sound like it, but as I say, I was really, um, especially in all my generation, the musician who grew up in Congo. I'm probably the only one, you know, that I play all kinds of. I researched a lot of traditional music, and I learned a lot about it. I went and met a lot of these musicians, so I know a lot of, you know, traditional music and from Congo, and rhythmically, I never go anywhere. You know, rhythmically with my music, it's, you know, it's completely always rooted in the rhythm that I grew up with. You know, the only difference I always say to people, yes, it's good to connect with your ancestry, and, you know, but also it's equally important to honor your own journey.
Mm.
You know, your you know, it's good to honor your own personal journey, but also the group, you know, like your country, your tribe, whatever it is. You know, that's all very important. So I always say, you know, we have so many different musicians, and Congo is very diverse when it comes to music, and it's really very very musical country. So I take all this information that I had from my ancestors, but I also have my personal experience, like playing with you. I also, you know, I learned something from you, you know, oh, like that time I was saying, I was sitting in the balcony, you know, listening to this music that was classical music. That's my experience that maybe my grandparents didn't have. So to me, Now, I'm really happy to say that classical music is my traditional music, my personal traditional music, because
Hmm.
it shaped me. Those moments when I was sitting in the balcony are part of my life. It's the life of, it happened. And jazz music, any music that I've heard is the soundtrack of my life as a human being. You can't really say to me, oh, Niwel, you from, is a Congolese musician, is like, he grew up with Congolese music. That's not true, because if you think about music, music touches you whether you like it or not. Because to be able to hear music, the particles have to actually physically travel into your earlobes
Yeah.
so you can hear. So whether you like it or not, it's actually touching you and it's shaping you in a certain way, probably in a deeper way that we probably never understand. So it's good to, as you say, to play, folk music, ancestor music, but I think it's equally important to honor your personal journey, not just the group. Like, oh, it doesn't. Oh, I'm from Congo, so this is where we do things in Congo. That's you can also, but I'm also Niwel. Like I had that experience of classical music and jazz and flamenco, which I love. I believe flamenco is traditional music to me too, because as a human being, if I went to Mars, you know, I would say to people, "Oh, you should on Earth. We have so much kind of music. We have flamenco. We have classical. That's how you would talk to Martians. You would talk to people from Mars as if you from Earth. You wouldn't be saying to them, in Germany. You say on Earth. This is what we have. So all music that I heard, rock music and rumba, these are all music that shaped me, including the ancestral music that we have in Congo. But definitely rhythmically, I never go anywhere. Because we have so much wealth of rhythm. Literally, I don't go anywhere looking for. So anything that you hear of me doing is folk music. Yep.
Great. Um, we talked already a little bit about like the times we live in, and they're like it's crazy times. Things seem to be falling apart. Do you feel that as musicians that we have a certain role to play at the moment? And if so, what is our role at the moment as artists, as musicians?
Yes, oh, for sure. Yeah. I really do believe, I think not really to engage with the politics. I think we need to, as I say, transcend this this situation that we're living in. We need to transcend that. And some I I've something I love I've loved about yoga. I've been doing yoga for years. We started doing yoga way back when. I love yin yoga. It's like the practice where you practice to you stay on one pose for a long time. And when you get into one pose, it's kind of uncomfortable, you know. But the idea of yin yoga is you don't push through that the discomfort. You observe.
Hmm.
You know, I'm starting to think sometimes, that's what we need to do. Not really to engage with all this. I mean, I don't want to come across like I'm saying don't do anything, you know. But to a certain extent, I think musicians maybe we should not engage with the politics. Try to just, bring love and peace and beauty onto people so they can, transcend all this that we're going through. I feel like, because that's they I might say, oh, let's go and write a protest song. Because I did
Hmm.
that. I've written songs, I went and did protests and all kinds of things. And I remember in 2000, in the Iraqi war, I was really involved and went to protests and wrote songs. And it was like the biggest protest ever that was done. But still, they went to war, you know? And I couldn't back then. I was like, wow, even after all this, they still went to war. You know, there has to be a different way of doing this. So right now, that's how I feel. You know,
Mm.
instead of just, I don't think everybody should do what I'm doing. Have this approach. But some people might still feel like they want to go protest. But I feel like at this stage, observing and then just make sure that the person next to you, wherever that is, whether it's in your house, your wife, your girlfriend, your daughter, your friend, homeless guy on the street, just bring a bit of happiness to that person. Just
Mm.
a small bit, you know, make a difference in that way. You know, s- it might make, if there was like few millions of people approaching like that, it would make a difference,
It
because
would make a huge difference.
huge difference. That's how I feel at the moment, because you know, there's, I mean, I've written songs and protests, and in fact, I have a song actually written right now. There you go. Um, but even the song, it's kind of towards that. It's more like about, okay, let's just observe this. How did we get here? Just let it, just look at it and see where that goes.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm pretty sure, you know, um, as I was saying about the pose, when you stay on that pose, you observe that discomfort. After a few minutes, you end up in a completely blissful place without even realizing it.
Mm.
I would hope that would happen.
Yeah, it's kind of a soft revolution, a soft protest. You went on tour with the Silkroad Ensemble,
Yes.
and you told me that you had a really nice experience on that tour, also interacting with the community and playing for people, local people. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, that was beautiful. It was really beautiful. We just came back 2 weeks ago with Silkroad Ensemble. Yes, it's with Rhiannon Giddens, she's the musical director. That was really her vision. That was because before that, Silkroad was Yo-Yo Ma was the artistic director. So it was, I suppose, it was more classical, Western classical music orientated. But now she's more kind of diversing it, where like she brought myself and Francesco Torrisi is Italian, and there was also Mehdi is from Morocco. Um, so, but the special thing about this tour was that we didn't just perform, because touring can get, a lot of people think when you tour is luxurious. People, oh, you're on tour, oh my God, but it's not. It also just gets like like a 9 to 5 job. It really does, because you're doing the same thing. And then, it just becomes like, okay, go to the hotel, out of the hotel, sound check, gig, into the next venue. Sometimes you don't even meet people. People are just there in the audience, you know. Then the concert is finished, you go backstage, that's it. And when you're playing like that, the audience is like, it's the audience. It's not people. It's one entity. It's
Yeah,
not, it's you. That's what you see. You just see, you know, just people, but it's one really. So there's no really human connection there, But doing it this way was so fulfilling. It was amazing. Really, I came back home like really blissed out. Like it's changed. Like I'll be a different musician after this, because we didn't just play the concert. So we went, we played. We would call maybe 2 or 3 days at one place. So we stayed for a few days. We did workshops. We went to universities. We went to your local communities. We met people, local groups, contemporary groups, and played with them and interacted with them. And we had just had, it was so great. We did this in Chicago, in many California, and um, yeah, many places. I think we're gonna do it again actually in June. And I just found that I enjoyed. It was the best tour. I enjoyed it the most because I get, you know, I'm not a guy who loves a lot of touring. Like people say, I want to just be touring for months on end. I get pretty, I get homesick very, I start missing my kids, my wife, or, home, pretty quickly. But
yeah,
this time it didn't happen. I was even saying to people, I was like, wow, this is the first time I'm really touring and I'm not having this feeling. I think this because of that, went and, just met with the locals, and local musicians would come, we just jammed. Then we would play a concert. Then they would come. and then we go to the next city, and even the music was better. I remember one night, especially, like the sense of floating, like it was like in the middle of a song. I really felt like I was floating, you know, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, and I think it was because of all that experience, you know. It was a day I relaxed so much that I really felt like, my God, we're floating
Hmm.
in this music. And I just, yeah, I think that's the best way of doing it. You know, if it's a bit expensive to do, you know, but if you can afford it, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Do you know, it's interesting because they say data is the new gold. And I actually think in the age of AI that we're living in, human connection is probably the new gold, like the sense of being connected. And I think as musicians, we have a superpower to actually connect people. And like
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about, this feeling of connecting to real people and having the boundaries blurred between like performing on stage. It's always you're up there on stage and yeah, it's the entity, the audience. But then actually to connect with the real community has so much power. Um, and I actually believe it's going to become even more valuable with everything that's
more
happening.
valuable. That's true. Yeah, I think so. I really do believe. Yeah, that's the way forward. That's, you know, if you can afford it, you should do that. If you want to play in a city, don't just play and go and, you know, play and go to the community, even busk, you know, if you busk on the
Yeah,
street, you know, just, you know, be human, do human things, you know, not just a superstar thing where, because, you know, the stage, there's lines and people look at it in a different way, you know,
yeah.
but when you go into the people and it's just, yeah, it was just such a amazing, um, blissful
Mm,
experience,
great.
really was.
So how do you view the whole development with AI and also like connecting to music and as a musician? And there's lots of talk, oh, do you know, like, are we becoming irrelevant as artists, as musicians? How do you view the whole AI topic?
Yeah, you know, I'm not afraid. I'm certainly not afraid. You know, I'm not afraid of it at all. Because when people say like AI, it's like, man, AI can't even make music. It makes music that sounds like human. Like, you know, it's like AI. If you say, oh, AI write music that sounds like the Beatles, I'm like, yeah, but Beatles already did that many years ago. I'm like, you know, why am I? I mean, I want to hear AI music that's completely AI music. That's different structures, different even instruments, different melodies, you know? If you tell me, oh, this AI can just write, I mean, maybe the pop musicians might have a problem because, you know, there's a formula of pop music that you kind of have to, if you want to be into that world of pop music, you know, maybe they're going to suffer. But personally, I'm not, no, because I, I look at myself. I mean, I'm doing better. You know, my music career is always getting better and better, right in the era of AI.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid at all. And I look at it as a tool, but it's a good tool. I don't think AI is bad at all. It's a good, it's just like a knife. You know, what are you going to do with a knife? Are you going to stab somebody, or are you going to take it and cut onions and make food to feed yourself and your family? That's what I was saying. It's mind-boggling to me when people are using it to deceive people.
Mm,
That's what's mind-boggling. It's the same as somebody just taking a knife, going and stabbing people on the street. Why would you do that?
mm,
You don't do that. You know, you should do something productive. I'm sure AI is. I haven't really delved into that world yet, but I'm pretty sure it's useful. You know, if you want, you can use it in a very useful way. You know, but in terms of the people saying, "Oh, you know, it's going to take over humans," it's just, nah, I don't think so, because it's not even smart at all. It can't do anything by itself. They can't do anything. People have to tell it. You can go there on the AI thing, say, "Oh, write a song that sounds like Kathryn Doehner." It's like, all right, if I want to listen to Kathryn Doehner music, I'm going to listen to Kathryn Doehner. I don't want to listen to AI playing Kathryn Doehner music. It's like, why? It
yeah.
doesn't even make sense to me. You know,
Mm,
so I think, as I say, Now it's like a novelty. It's just like the 80s. If you listen to music of the 80s, it was all big gated drum kit and all this because it was a novelty back then. Then people just you know went back to like acoustic music. After that, I think the same thing gonna happen with AI. Now people are just going crazy with it. But as you say, human interaction it will never die. I really do not believe that. People would always need. It's just best. It's just best. Just talking to somebody, look at somebody in the eye. Hearing somebody's voice. Just singing just right in front of you or playing. I think that would always be priceless.
Yeah, I think it will even gain in value. I think it will become more and more valuable.
Yes, for sure.
What is the topic at the moment that is touching your heart the most as a musician, but also as a human being?
Wow, that's a good question. There's definitely a rise in like all this right wing sort of type of thinking. That I think it's worldwide. It's not just in Europe; it's also in Africa. Because when people talk about right wing, people forget about Africa. People like to think of Africa as this kind of like da place. There's also a lot of fascists. In fact, Africa is very fascist. Because it's run by dictators. In most of African countries, gay, that's you have no chance. And in fact, I think just last week in Senegal or something like that, they law like if you're gay, you're like go to jail for like 20 years or something like that crazy. And in Congo just 2 years ago, even Congo was quite liberal when it comes to like gay and stuff. Because I grew up, you know, it was not normal, but this person, you knew this guy is gay, and it wasn't the big deal. It wasn't like you insulted him or no. Like I had friends who were gay, and but you didn't interact with them with that topic, but you knew that he was. But you did not you did not insult him. But now the presidents came out was like, you know, it's not allowed. If you see him on the street, if you see a gay person on the street, you know, and you can get arrested. Basically, call the police to be arrested. That's very fascist. I just have to say that because when people talk about fascism, they talk about Germany, America, and all that. I'm like, Africa is also very fascist at the moment, and there's a lot of also there's a sentiment of like basically what's happening was we're living at a time where everybody is traveling everywhere faster than
Mhm.
ever before. See, so you go to most places, they go, oh, all these people are coming, taking our jobs. This is also happening in Congo, it's happening in South Africa, in Angola, in Ireland, in Germany, in America. It's the same topic. And it just breaks my heart. It really does. Because I'm like, wow, why? Because people, the reason people always moved. This is not a new thing. People always migrated. This is not a new thing at all. It's just we came and created all these borders. But people always, and why did they move? They always moved to look for comfort. It's just that simple. People when there was, like, give an example, we have the Baka people known as the pygmy. They would move. Even today, they live in the jungle. There's more. There's no fruits here at the moment. We move where there's fruits over there in the next whatever valley and that's just been the story of humans.
Yeah.
Really, it's really just that people always move it, but now we're living on a time where it's nearly like it's a crime. It's a
Mm.
crime to move. It really breaks my heart because I'm like, God, even after all, we went to the moon and we created all this AI. We call ourselves the most intelligent species, but
Yeah.
we can't deal with this. I just hope we will find a way to live together, learn about each other, because that's what it's about. Usually, if you don't know somebody, you have this assumption of what that person is.
Mm.
And then usually when you start talking to this person, it's always like, oh, completely it's a different person. Usually that's what happens,
Yeah.
You find out, oh, actually, it wasn't completely not the person I thought it was, a different guy. I may sound like naive, but in general, most people are usually nice. Most people are great. Really, in my experience, most people are great. I'm not saying that, there are no bad people. There are evil people. In fact, you know, in power, actually, that's where they are mostly. That's really where the evil people are, you know. So I just hope that we will find a way to live together, learn about each other's culture, and each personally, about people, and that we can find a way to live together. Because I have even no words to really explain how it really breaks my heart. It really does.
Mm. Do you have a theory why that is the zeitgeist of today? Why it's happening everywhere? Like you said, it's not only Europe, it's everywhere. Do you have any theory why that's the case?
If I answer from like a Congo point of view, I may understand. Like we've had a lot of issues, there's a lot of poverty in the last 30 years. That there's a lot of the child soldiers. Because usually what happens, they get those child soldiers, then they grow up, then they go back in everyday life. Somebody who's like 10, 9, was like in a war. Then by the time he's 16, he just goes back to everyday life. And then they don't know what to do. They have no jobs. And then all of a sudden like in Congo, you get a lot of people from India and Libya. There's a lot of Libyan. They do a lot of business there, and people are complaining. I said, well, may I understand. There's a lot of uneducated people. I have to say, like I said, a lot of the child soldiers, they really end up in Kinshasa, so they have nowhere to go. So they
Hmm.
turn into crime.
Hmm.
And then when they see somebody from a different country doing well, and then it's like, oh, look at this guy. He's coming here taking our jobs. If I look at it in Europe, it's I don't know. I don't. It's weird. Like like this sentiment, especially in the last 5 years. I think in Ireland, it's really noticeable in the last 5 years. It was
Hmm.
never there before. You
Yeah.
know. I think of the Ukraine war. Created a lot of that because a lot of the Ukrainian came, and they had some privileges that the people here didn't like. Um, it's just really heartbreaking to that we're still talking about racism issues.
Yeah.
The immigration. I'm like, really, we've gone so far. It's difficult to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. What projects are you working on artistically at the moment?
I play with Rhiannon Giddens. Yeah, she's American singer and banjo player. So I play with her in her band. So I'm quite busy with that, as well as my own music, which I play a lot with Eamon, but also solo. Like actually later on, I have a solo tour. Well, I'm gonna be in Germany,
Oh,
so yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna let you know.
please.
So yeah, it's still the same, but then also Silkroad. I'm also a member of Silkroad. So it's still the same as as in terms of like playing with a lot of different people as well as playing my own music.
So we've talked so much and also so much about like the difficult topics that are happening at the moment. But if you look into a hopeful future, like say 5 years from now, and great things have happened, what would you see? What would you like to see have happened?
It's really simple. I would love the whole world, everybody in all corners of the world, to have access to water, food, and medical. Be able to just, I'm sick, I can go to the hospital. It's really that simple. I'd say that will make space for people to think about other things, more beautiful things.
Yeah,
The arts could always think of, even arts to really make a good art, like the best art that we have. Those people, they were in a place of comfort. If you look at a lot of the amazing pieces of music that we've had, and in these people were funded. They had funding. People funded them so they could take the time to have at least peace and to focus in their work. So just that, start with that. I would love to come to that. This is obviously utopia. This is like imagine all the people. I mean, it's like I hope that's what would happen. We can. That's the thing is. The thing is, it's possible. That's the thing.
Mm.
It's possible. We have to stop fragmenting the world now. We live. Just make sure everybody just has access to water. You won't believe it. You go to Congo. Most people don't have access to clean water.
Yeah.
In 2026, it's like really in Sudan, all these people. It's like some of the. I watched a lot of these documentaries. I'm like, God, I can't believe it. And it's and I know we're saying it's utopia, but it's actually isn't. It's possible.
Mm.
It's actually possible that we can we can organize right now as human beings and fix this issue.
Amen. Niwel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much.